MetsMusings is an unofficial, independent podcast covering New York's National League Baseball team. It is not affiliated in any way with Major League Baseball or the New York Mets.
Now it's time for some New York Mets baseball talk. Here's Gary Mack bringing you the latest news and analysis from Mets Nation and the world of baseball on another edition of Mets Musings.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Mets Musings. I hope you all have been good out there, happy and healthy. It's kind of a sad day in the baseball world, as yesterday we got the news that Hall of Famer, the great Willie Mays, passed away at the age of 93. Willie, of course, played for years with the New York Giants, the San Francisco Giants, and ended his career in New York, back in New York, with the New York Mets. And I thought we'd take a look at his record. He was the oldest living HOF, Hall of Famer, until his passing. 23 Major League seasons, a batting average career, .301, 3,293 hits, 660 home runs, 1,909 RBI, 339 stolen bases, 24 times an All-Star. He was a World Series champion, 1954, two-time NL MVP, 1954, 1965, NL Rookie of the Year, 1951, 12-time Gold Glove Awards winner, Roberto Clemente Award winner in 1971, NL Batting Champion 1954, four-time NL Home Run Leader 55, 62, 64, 65, four-time NL Stolen Base Leader, hit 4 home runs in one game on April 30th, 1961. He's number 24, retired, of course, by the San Francisco Giants and the New York Mets, who recently did it last year, I believe it was. So Willie Mays, the great Willie Mays, has passed away at the age of 93. And, for those of you younger people out there that never saw him play, go to YouTube and see if you can watch some of the videos. He was truly a magnificent player. And it was just a pleasure to see him play. Of course, he was always against our Mets. When I got to see him play, once the Mets came into existence in '62, my mother was a big New York Giant fan, constantly raved about Willie Mays. And of course, when the Giants and the Dodgers left New York, we didn't get to see that much unless it was on television of Willie and the other National League stars, because we lived in New York. The Yankees were the only team here. And, of course, the argument for years was Willie, Mickey, or the Duke, who was the greatest center fielder in New York. I was too young to see Duke play. I was too young to see Willie or Mickey play in their real primes when they were young, but I did get to see both of them later in their careers, and I guess they were both in the prime of their careers then. And I was a Mickey guy. As a kid in New York, I was a Mickey Mantle guy. But 1962 came about, and the Giants would come to New York to play the Mets. And I have to tell you, it was happening. Whenever the Giants and Dodgers came back to New York, it was some big deal. I know it's hard to relate to that now. It doesn't seem that. But back then, you have to remember in 62 especially, and probably leading up to 64, and that it had been a short period of time between the Dodgers and the Giants leaving New York and going out to the West Coast. It was only 5 or 6 years, so there were tons of die-hard Dodger and Giant fans still remaining in New York. That generation, unfortunately, a lot of them have gone now, and um, their children who may have become Met fans are getting older. But at that particular time, there was a lot of Dodgers, former Dodgers and Giants fans. Now, some followed them, even though it was more difficult in those days. We didn't have the internet, we didn't have computers. Uh, you had maybe, other than your local stations, you only had a game a week on NBC, had the game of the week on a Saturday, and maybe you'd get one or two during the week of your own team, and you'd follow the games on the radio. So it was very difficult following the West Coast because it was late at night. But usually you'd get it the next day, or actually a day later sometimes, the scores, because of the way communication was at that point in time. Not that we were living in the dark ages, it was just a different time. We didn't have all of the technology and the instant uh, feedback that we get nowadays. So, just a different time. So, you didn't see a lot of the National League teams until the Mets came into existence. Then we got to see these teams. Then we got to see the great Willie Mays and the great Willie McCovey and Orlando Cepeda and the Bob Gibsons and the Lou Brocks. But I can remember sitting there and watching Willie Mays play, and I always felt, to me, he looked like he was out of control. He just, the way he ran the bases, and his swing, everything about him. But if you watch him constantly enough, he's very much in control. It's just the way he looked, his body. He was fast as lightning when he ran. Holy cow! If he hit one in the gap and he was going for a triple or a double, he was amazing to watch. It was just incredible. His legs looked like the Road Runner, going around in circles there as he tore around the bases. They say he wore his a hat a size too small, so it would fly off. So he had a little bit of flair going on there, but the hat would come flying off. And in the early days, and then the helmets later on, when they went to wearing helmets with no side protectors, I may add. Um, just an incredible ball player, and he could do it all. I mean, incredible. He could hit for power. He could hit for a base hit. He could run like the wind. He was a terrific center fielder. Oh, incredible with that basket catch of his. Just an incredible ball player. And, he moved from New York, which had a vast center field at the Polo Grounds, moved out to San Francisco, where in those days, Candlestick Park, where they first played the Giants, was open. And it was incredibly cold there at a night game. I'm talking 40, 50 degrees in the middle of July. It was incredibly cold. People went to the ball game in parkas, and the wind was unbelievable. And he had to adjust how he played center field. He had to adjust how he hit even. And he did. He became a right center field hitter. He had great power to right center field. It was just an incredible, incredible ball player, likes we may never see again. Otani's great. He can pitch, he can hit, but other than when he's pitching, he's not really playing the field. He's not out there every out. Uh, Mike Trout was probably the closest thing you would have had to a Willie Mays, but he's injury prone. He gets hurt a lot. Willie seemed to play every day, every game. Um, you just there's nobody compatible to him. Nobody that can do when you talk about a five as a tool player. He had all the tools. He had a gun for an arm on him. He could throw out people left and right. He made that famous catch in the '54 World Series with his back to the to home plate. And people will tell you to this day the most incredible part of that catch was not the catch, but the throw. He spun around and threw a strike into the infield. Just an incredible ball player. And that was in the Polo Grounds. In the Polo Grounds, that was deep. That was a very big ballpark and very deep ballpark. It was real shallow on the lines. Down the lines, it was like 290 feet or something. But center field was huge, and the clubhouse was in center field, and that was, I don't know, 600 feet away or something. It was just a huge ballpark, and he patrolled center field and was fantastic at it. And of course, then moved to San Francisco with the Giants when they went out there. Eventually, Joan Payson wanted him back in New York and talked him out of retirement to come back, and traded for him and brought him back to New York for a short period of time, season and a half, I think it was. And he was not the same ball player. Granted, he was in his 40s then, but you could see the flashes. I mean, there was every now and then you'd see the old Willie Mays. His first game as a Met, I believe it was, he hit a home run to win the game, and it was, it was just a fantastic thing. He, of course, will remember him sliding into home plate and being called out during the World, or not. It wasn't him. I think he was the on deck hitter during the World Series on his knees. But I can't say enough about how great a ball player he was, what he meant to the game, and it's a sad day. He had a good long life though, but we're still sad that another icon is taken from us, and our condolences go out to his family. But goodbye, Willie, and you were the best. I have an excerpt of an interview that I did with the author of a book called 24, The Life and Times of the Say Hey Kid. He co-wrote it with Willie Mays, and I interviewed him for another podcast, but I kept an excerpt of that interview, and it was about Willie's time in New York, more or less. So we're going to play that. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll play that interview. It was from about 3 or 4 years ago. So you'll see a different look to the show. But that will play when we come back after this message.
Baseball and BBQ, your place for interesting baseball talk, opinions, and history. Baseball and BBQ, your place for barbecue recipes, tips, and interviews from the world of barbecue. If you like baseball and if you like barbecue, then tune in to Baseball and BBQ. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and baseballtalkradio.com.
Okay, and I'm back, and my surprise for you is that I've got an excerpt of an interview that I did with John Shea, who wrote the book 24. It is the life stories and lessons from the Say Hey Kid. It's about Willie Mays, and this section happens to deal with Willie Mays returning to New York as a New York Met.
Willie told me there were two regrets he had in life, and one was not going to college. He never really had that opportunity from the time he grew up and where he grew up, to play baseball in college or even football in college as a quarterback, because that's what he was. So he signed with the Giants. Luckily, he played baseball. And years later, he looks back at that as the obviously the right thing to do. But anyway, the other regret was being traded. And that was an immediate regret that lasted for a little bit. It didn't last forever because while he wanted to retire a Giant, he felt like he was going back home. And he had the close kinship with Joan Payson, who was a minority owner of the old New York Giants. And then when they moved, she just sold all her shares, didn't want any part of that, and always wanted to do two things: bring a National League team back to New York and have Mays on her team again. Well, she became the majority owner of the Mets and spoke with Horace Stoneham for quite a bit about bringing Mays back to New York. And it finally happened. I mean, obviously late in Willie's career, 1970, Willie was 40. And he was still a great ball player. He led the league in walks. He led the league in on-base percentage. He had 23 homers, or 18 homers. He had 23 steals, 26 attempts. So he could do it all, and he was still a great center fielder. But the following May, Stoneham trades him to the Mets because he said he couldn't afford his $165,000 salary. So he got Charlie Williams, who didn't really pan out, but... So Mays goes to New York, and I spoke with a lot of Mets, Tom Seaver a long time ago, Kranepool, Kuzman, and they just spoke glowingly about Mays when he walked in the clubhouse and the presence and the fact that we got this great ball player. And, they won in 69, but they weren't all that good in the following years. In fact, in 73, in August, they were in last place in their division. And they just went crazy in September and won the division, beat the Reds, and then played the A's in the World Series. But if you look back, Mays was a part-time player with the Mets in 72 and 73. I mean, he actually led the Mets in OPS, which is on-base percentage plus slugging percentage. So it wasn't a bad year as a bench player. He played first base.
Played a lot of first base, yeah.
He played a lot of first base. Then the next year, Willie was fine calling it quits then. He said, but Joan Payson wanted him to play another year. And that was the worst year because of the injuries. He was never on the disabled list until his final year at age 42. Imagine that. I mean, Willie Mays was as durable as it gets. We talk about Cal Ripken, but Willie Mays has a record, 150 games for 13 straight seasons, 150 plus. Even Cal can do that. 150 plus games for 13 straight seasons. And most of that streak during the 154 game season. So he didn't take time off. He played both ends of the doubleheader. He played day games after night games. He just wanted to play. He played 9-10 innings in every All-Star game. Spring training, the managers always wanted him to play just so the fans could see him. He wore out quite a bit, but that was his thing. His dad always told him, work hard. And what he meant by that was play the game. Don't ask to come out. Don't have the manager pull you. So anyway, 1973 happens, and, Willie's got ribs, he's got shoulder, and he's got knee, and all needed a lot of work in the trainer's room. And he didn't even play after September 9th when he broke 2 ribs going for a ball as a first baseman, crashing into the, side and foul territory and messing up his ribs. So he didn't play again until the playoffs. And he figured, okay, I'm just going to – they had Willie Mays Day at Shea Stadium. He retired, tearjerker. Everybody was there. So anyway, you fast forward to the World Series, and he's starting center fielder. Game 1 is the number 3 hitter in Oakland. Oh, my God. And he gets a hit. He's 1 for 4. The Mets lose. But everybody remembers, and you brought it up at the beginning, Game 2. And that's the one that the Mets won in extra innings. And that's the one that Willie fell down. And that's the one that Willie's at his knees at home plate arguing with Augie Donatelli. And those were the images I knew. That's the only images I knew. I mean, I was old enough to remember 73, and I know about that series. I used to go to A's games as well. But I figured, well, everyone always says, don't be Willie Mays. Don't retire too late. Retire when you're on top. All this stuff, okay? So I said, well, I want to research this. So I talked to everybody I could on the Mets, everybody I could on the A's who were there that day, got all these observations from Willie himself. And there's a lot of backstories to the images that we see. In other words, when Willie's on his knees, people say, oh, he must have struck out. He must have dropped the ball. No, he was arguing as the on-deck hitter with Augie Donatelli because he blew a ball at home plate that cost the Mets.
Yeah, Harrelson. I think Buddy Harrelson was scored and it looked like he beat the tag, and Willie was I believe he was the on deck hitter.
He was the on deck hitter, and that's why he was closest to the plate, and he wasn't complaining to the umpire because of something he did. He was supporting Bud Harrelson because Harrelson was safe. Fosse missed the tag, though Fosse told me he tagged him out in the book, so you get both sides, obviously, and so that kind of explains that picture. And there's the playing center field. He botched a play or two. Well, he is 42. If he did that when he was 22, people would have forgotten it and moved on. But now he's older, so people remember it. But again, he hardly played after September. But Rusty Staub had a bum shoulder in Game 1, so he's playing center field and hitting third. Game 2, he doesn't start, but goes in for Rusty as a pinch runner, stays in the game, and actually goes out to right field because that was Rusty's position. Yogi didn't tell him where to play. And then he and Don Hahn are both out there in right field together. And they both look in the dugout. So who's playing center? And they signal Willie, you go play center. He said, okay. So sure enough, Darren Johnson of the A's hits this soft line drive over the infield. And Willie comes in, tries to make a shoestring catch and falls over. The ball goes back to the wall. And later in the game, Reggie hits a ball all over him and he loses it in the sun. So I wanted to do the research. And I said, okay, what really happened? What caused these things? And it wasn't, Willie Mays was old as much as, I don't want to make excuses for Mays, but
no, because I know where you're going with this. I've talked to Crane Pool a number of times. I've talked to a couple of the other guys. And go ahead.
Well, Reggie played center field for the A's that day. We had known him as a right fielder, but he played center field in Game 2 of the 73 World Series, and he told me that was the most brutal sun he's ever seen. And Oakland was always a bad sun. And Willie had never played in Oakland, even though he played all those years at Candlestick, just because there was no interleague play and they didn't have any preseason Bay Bridge series or anything like that. The A's didn't come until 69. So anyway, there's the sun, there's the fact that he hadn't played, there's the fact he was injured, there's the fact that there was a miscommunication. He didn't even know he was going to play center field because Yogi didn't tell him, on and on and on. But everybody who was there just says, hey, man, don't knock Willie. it's just kind of tough circumstances, and retire early. I mean, I talked to Ricky Henderson, who's playing independent ball in his mid 40s. All these fellows who play deep into their 40s, and they all told me, so man, don't give up the game. It doesn't matter if you're Willie Mays in his prime. If you're Willie Mays at 75% of the old Willie Mays, you're still pretty darn good and a valuable asset. And that's what Kranepool and Kuzman and Seaver told me, that you don't want to disregard Mays. But anyway, that's kind of what some people remember of that World Series, even though it might have been unfair. And Willie doesn't make excuses, but there are reasons for the images that we see, and there's a backstory to everything. And I think that's what we try to present in that chapter.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview snippet with John Shea, author of the book 24 by Willie Mays and John Shea. It was a great interview to do. I really had a good time talking about Willie, and as we know, he's left us now. But the Mets have been red hot. They had a 7-game win streak. Got broken yesterday by the Texas Rangers, but that's okay. They've gotten to within 3 games of 500. Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, J.D. Martinez are all red hot with their hitting. Jeff McNeil has shown some signs of coming out of it. Cody Sanger maybe one step closer to making his return to the Mets after he threw a successful bullpen yesterday. His next outing should be against live hitters, so Cody could be coming back. I don't want to drag on forever, so I'm going to end this right now, but my apologies go out to Sean in Bristol, UK. Sean had sent me a voicemail about the London series, and due to circumstances, I did not do a show last week, and this week, with the passing of Willie, I wanted to concentrate on that. So, Sean, I did listen to it, and thank you so much for your kind words. And I'm glad you enjoyed the games and got to see them on your own turf instead of having to come here. But I'm sure you'll be here to see the Mets later in the season. So, if you're watching the show, please hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Hit the like or subscribe button on whatever medium that you get the podcast on. If it's the audio, we're on all the Google Play and Apple Podcasts and all the big names. We are there. So, I guess until next time, let us say what we always say. A hot Mets team. Mets go to Chicago. That's what I wanted to say. Mets go to Chicago for 3, and we'll see how they do. Cubbies are about on par with the Mets team, but the Mets are hot and starting to gel. Hopefully, they'll continue this run. Okay, so that's going to do it for this week's show. So until next time, keep the faith, stay optimistic, and let's go, Mets. And goodbye, Willie. Rest in peace, my friend. I'll see you next time on another edition of Mets Musings.